flag, but at this time I'll ask everyone to stand for pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
District announcements. In partnership with the Whitney Young Health Center, Troy High will be offering their COVID-19 vaccination clinic for our students age 16 and up, yes, on April 30th and May 21st. I don't know where that's going to be.
Right here at Troy High.
Right here at Troy High? Okay. That's great news. Public input on agenda items, there was none received. So we'll move right to the February financials with Mrs. Schweizer.
Thanks. The budget.
In person.
Yeah.
Live.
I'm here.
Love it.
The budget transfers this month were BOCES, and we created new accounts for the CARES Act, so it was just general movement in there. The auditor reviewed $6.9 million in claims. The general fund, we're still projecting a small surplus, which the board can decide to allocate to reserves at the end of the year. Yes. School lunch. It looks low in the revenues because there have been holds, but they have started to move those reimbursements now this month. Grants, we've been consistently getting any withheld payments back, and all bank accounts have been reconciled.
Awesome, thank you. I do have one quick question. The CARES Act, what did you,
The CARES Act money.
what do we have to do? I mean, I'm familiar with it on another end of it, yeah, in the school district.
How we are going to spend that money. We created accounts so that when we submit our final report on how we spent the money, it's easier to.
Okay.
So there's CARES Act 1.0 and 2.0, we'll say. So 1.0 is for this year and already allocated. 2.0 will be discussed tonight, and that's really the second stimulus, if you will.
Gotcha.
So they kind of both called the CARES Act, but there's really two different versions.
All right, great, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you so much. Superintendent update with Mr. Carmelo.
So a quick COVID update. You probably have seen in the news, the CDC a while ago actually changed the physical distance requirement from 6 feet down to 3 feet. The New York State Department of Health took a little while. It usually lags a week or two. This one was a little bit more than 2 weeks. And the New York Department of Health finally came out last Friday to say that they agreed with a lot of stipulations and a lot of restrictions. And in fact, I'm not sure it's going to do us any good, but I will tell you we meet on it regularly. We had a meeting Monday with all the superintendents. We had a meeting today with the Department of Health to ask them questions. There was a webinar today for the New York State Department of Health. We met with Rensselaer County like we always do on Wednesdays. So we'll watch the webinar with the New York State Department of Health today. We have a meeting again tomorrow. So I will keep the board posted or updated and posted, obviously, and the community. The rules right now, one of the sticking points is if your county, which for us Rensselaer County obviously, is in the high zone, and even though our positivity rate percent is less than 2%, there are two different gauges. That's one, it can't be 9%, so we're well below that. But then there's also a mark that talks about the number of cases per 100,000. And so according to CDC, Rensselaer County is still a high zone. When you're a high zone, for the middle school and high school to go 3 feet, you have to cohort. And what that means, if you don't know, is the same group of kids have to stay together the whole day and not intermingle with any other groups of kids, which is easy in second grade. You have a second grade class that stays together. In 9th grade, when there are 5 different math classes you might be in, and 11th grade when there's a bunch of different science classes, it's really, for a size of a school like ours, it's not possible to cohort at the secondary level. So if we remain in the high zone, which is a red zone, we won't be able to do it at the secondary level. We asked a question today about 6th grade. I said all along that I wish our 6th graders could come every day. And 6th graders sort of cohort because they don't change classes as much as the 7th through 12th. So we're trying to get answers on that. The other sticking point is transportation. Right now, the 3 feet has not been adopted in the buses, so you can do it in school, but you have to figure out how to get here, and that's really been a tough part for some of our families that are right now on the waiting list. So I think it's going to help a little bit, and once we get the answers to some of those questions, it might help even more. But the media made it seem like everybody come on in, whole scale, 3 feet, and we're back to normal, which is not really the case, at least at this time. But we're working through the details, and I will keep you posted anytime I get any significant updates. And I should also say graduation and prom events, that guidance did come out. Graduation's outdoors, which we're planning on doing. I think I said that last time at the football field. You can have upwards of 500. Going back to the announcement you just made, Mr. Mayo, the kids would have to, anybody attending, kids and parents, got to be either vaccinated or tested and have a negative test within, I think it's 72 hours of the event. So the more kids we get vaccinated, there was an event today at Hudson Valley and one tomorrow. Whitney Young is partnering with us to try to get a group of kids. So the more we get, the easier it'll be to have an event like we want to have. And I will keep you posted on that as well. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, next we'll have budget draft number 2. Okay, take it away. Thank you. Oh, I thought it said Mr. Hotel.
Did it?
Yeah.
I'm still don't trust him with that.
Oh, man.
God, we do though, Adam. We do.
Once in a while, I'll do one like the parent meetings.
Maybe, yeah, I'll get you a PTA.
Yeah, once in a while I have to do one.
So 6
I think
people.
there was one you did out of it. One.
Maybe next year.
I did too,
See if I can relinquish that control. I got a little bit of an issue with that stuff. You know how that goes.
We can keep him locked in his car.
So we actually got good news for tonight, and excited to present this tonight, and excited over the last couple of days. There's still some things we're working through, and just like the DOH guidance I just talked about, there's still some things that we have to get all the details straight. But the future looks really, really good for us, and so I'm excited to bring this to you. So the mission statement is the Tri-City School District will provide a strong educational and social foundation to graduate all students college and career ready. It's in the forefront of all of our decisions. It's certainly in the forefront when we're putting our budget together. A budget is a value statement every year, what you want to put your money towards. And this mission statement is the reason we're doing everything that we do each and every day. This is a repeat slide, but I thought it was important just to kind of, review and then move forward. So, unique and challenging year. We're proud of the things we've done, but it's been stressful and tough. And everybody has worked together so well as a team. And it's also been a unique and challenging budget development process. You remember when Assemblymember McDonald was here, he said the same kind of things. There's so much uncertainty out there. But over the last week, that uncertainty has manifested into some positive news. With still a little bit of uncertainty, but the trend is certainly in the right direction. 2 lenses that we always use to do our budget development process. Educationally sound, what do our students need to be successful? The mission statement I just talked about, all the staffing and programs, all the supports, and how do we fully support our students after the year that they've been through to make sure their social, mental, and emotional health is being taken care of, and their academics and learning loss, re-engaging them into the school community, all things that we are going to be able to do, and again are excited to start working on the plan to do that. At the same time, fiscally responsible. I am super proud always of our educational program, our instructional program we put together. That leads to the graduation rates that we always brag about, and it leads to all the successful extracurricular activities and things that our kids are doing in the classroom each and every day. But I'm equally proud of the fiscal responsibility, keeping our tax rate, tax levy increases low, always being mindful of our overburdened taxpayers. especially this year with the economic fallout that everyone has faced. We've been under the tax cap and sometimes considerably under, because we know what our taxpayers are going through. And so this year will be no different, you'll see, as we go through this. So the state budget was finalized last week. There's obviously hundreds and hundreds of pages, but these are the big details that we should know about. I'll spend a little bit of time on this slide. Please ask any questions if you have them. The biggest thing about this contract, or this state budget, excuse me, is the foundation aid. So remember back when we were talking about in draft one, back in January, even before we did draft one, the governor came out with his executive budget. And remember, in his executive budget, he froze foundation aid again. Remember, last year foundation aid was frozen, and that caused our $3 million gap that we fought through last budget development cycle. Right? This year he froze it again, and remember, he made up for it by taking the federal stimulus money and closing the gap with that money. And remember the big thing that we wrote on that slide back then, and it wasn't just us, I think someone, member McDonald talked about it, the media was talking about it, there were a lot of advocacy groups saying it, that it was going to cause a fiscal cliff. You can't close the gap of a state budget for education with federal money that's going to go away in 3 years, because what are you going to do when that 3 years is up? And so the final state budget came in, and the Assembly and Senate, remember their one-house bills, they asked for the $1.4 billion increase in foundation aid, and they got it. It's the largest single-year increase since the formula was enacted, and it is going to be a game changer for us. Not necessarily for this year. For this year, it's not that different. I'll jump down 4 bullets. Our aid increase this year is $3.3 million, a little bit above that, $3.3 million. What really happens this year for us is we take the governor's proposal, we take out that federal money and put in this money. So the federal money becomes separate, which it was supposed to be in the first place. So it's not much of an increase from us from draft one to draft two, because remember we were using that governor budget. So the money was the same, just the source of that money, and what we can do with the other money is what could be a game changer, and will be a game changer for us. Every district will receive at least 2%, and there's a little bit of, there's an algorithm to how much, some people get 2, some people get 3, and all of that. That's an issue for us, and you've heard me say it a bunch of times, when they give everybody a minimum increase, you probably know what I'm going to say, but I'll say it anyway. There are 300 some odd districts that are already overfunded. They get more than the formula says they should get. So even those districts are going to get a 2% increase. So for us, that's never good. But for this year, it really doesn't matter because of the next line. So there's a statutory plan in place in the budget for a full phase-in over the next 3 years. So to be fully funded for the foundation aid formula in 23-24. We've been asking for that since even before our superintendent, Dr. Howard, was here, and I was the assistant superintendent doing these budget presentations with the board. We talked about being underfunded. At that point, I think it was $8 million, then it went to 9. Now we're at like 11 plus, almost $12 million underfunded. So you can quickly figure out what that means. If we're $12 million underfunded and they're giving us 3.3 this year, it's already in the formulas. We're due to get 4.5 next year and another 4.5 the following year in foundation aid, so that by 23-24, that underfunded gap will be gone. That sets us up. It's great. The money is, obviously great, and it sets us up for the future. But it's also great to kind of not have that uncertainty every year. I think a few times in our budget presentations we've written, this is Groundhog Day. This is the same thing we've always discussed. We go down to the legislators and show them our underfunded amount. At small cities that I'm on, we meet every year with legislators and the commissioner monthly. And we talk about all the small city school districts underfunded, and so it's something that's been on the docket for so long. To know that that's there now in the final budget and a plan in place is just really, really great news for us. Again, it doesn't affect this year's budget that much because it really replaced the federal money that the governor had put in, but it does give us that money to now do something, which will be at the end of this presentation, what we're going to do with that federal money. Again, stop me if you have any questions, but that is huge news for us right there. That first chunk of foundation aid in the final state budget was as good a news as we could have gotten.
Can I just say?
Yeah, absolutely.
So pretty much the easiest way to look at it is, this is the general fund budget, which is separate and distinct from the federal stimulus. So under the governor's proposal, we would have gotten about 12 million in federal stimulus. Now we're going to get 15 plus. So that money, you know, is kept over in that bucket.
Yeah. So, thank you, Adam. So I'll get to that next. So the federal aid is supplement, not supplant. Remember, again, the governor's proposal was supplanting. It was making up for a gap in state budget money using the federal money. The fiscal cliff conversation was scaring everybody. Now it really is truly going to be separate money, as Adam just said. And you're right, I don't mean to imply that that $3 million is gone. That $3 million is now, the 12 becomes 15, and we have money that we can do some great things for our students over the next 3.5 years. But for, you know, this, not counting the federal aid, is our general fund budget that, you know, deals with our tax levy and all of that kind of stuff. Consolidated expense-based aids, remember the governor proposed to combine them all, BOCES and transportation, and you know there was a list in my presentation of 8 or 9 things. Put them all into one services aid, and you know we obviously didn't want that. You know that's money you count on the year we get back. If we spend $1 on transportation, we know we're getting 84 some odd cents back on that dollar, and so you're making decisions based on that. And so that was rejected, and we're business as usual as far as that goes. The fund balance flexibility, because there's an influx of money coming in, that fund balance flexibility would have been nice. Remember the 4% cap that you can keep in unappropriated fund balance. But, again, what Adam just said, the federal money is being treated as a special aid grant. So it really has a similar effect because it's separate. If that was general fund money, even the same 15 million, and you couldn't raise your unappropriated amount, you know, districts would be struggling trying to spend that much money right now, and it wouldn't be good for kids because it would be haphazard and kind of rushed. So they pulled it out, they made it a special aid grant, treat it like a grant, and it's separate money, and we have, again, we'll talk about it in a little more detail later on, but we have up through September of 2024 now to spend it. We don't have September 24 to put a plan together. We have to put the plan together by this July 1st. And we're excited to do that. We've already started brainstorming a ton of ideas. But it's going to be over 4 different summers and 3 different school years. So it's going to be really, really great. So the tax levy conversation, you know, this is the time of year we have to make that decision. And usually it's a little bit of a discussion. You know, we talked about it over the last week. This year's been extremely difficult on everyone in the district, in the community, everywhere. We want to be mindful of our overburdened taxpayers. Just talked about the fiscal responsibility, especially because of what's happened this past year and people losing their jobs and people getting, you know, reduced hours and all the other kinds of things. With the increase in foundation aid and the commitment to phase in that foundation aid, I think we're in a position to be able to give a break to the taxpayers. So we were working in draft 1 and our tax cap was 1.4%. We're recommending with the money that we'll have coming in, it's not going to affect programming at all. You know, we're recommending a 0% tax levy increase. I think it's the right move to do for our taxpayers. Now remember, we've had that conversation before where I always said you can't do that because you're leveraging the following year, you're leaving money on the table. Next year's tax levy and tax cap gets built off this year's tax levy. But knowing that that phase-in is coming, I don't think there's any way around it. Obviously, that's a board decision. But I think it ends up being about $500,000 with the amount of money that we're going to pull in from Foundation Aid and the federal money. I think it's only right to give the taxpayers a break as well. Do you want to stop and discuss that now? Or?
Do you remember the 1 year that we went out, that we did do 0%? What was it the following year?
I have,
In the last one.
I think it was 1.
Yeah.
I had the whole list, right?
We did on one of them. What was that on this one? The one slide I wanted to read it, all the other ones.
Yeah, I do repeat a lot of them, but I didn't repeat
You think?
There it is. You guys are tough. We went out
Thomas
on,
is grateful it's not her.
we went out 0 in 2016-17. The following year was 0.5%, 0.45.
And then was it,
Then it was 1.5, then 1, and then last year, remember, because of the budget gap we had, we went all the way up to 1.99. That's the highest we've been in
see,
a while.
but see, we went to 0, and then all of a sudden we went right back up. So, you know what I mean? It's kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, but the 199 last year wasn't really a result of the 0, which was 4 years earlier. The 199 last year was because he froze the foundation aid late in the game, and we had a $3 million gap, and so we needed to go as close to that tax gap as we could. That's why we did it last year. I think we're going to be in a good place, Tom. I don't think there's anything to worry about. Again, I'm the one usually saying let's not go too low, but you know, I think it's the year to do it.
I think after the year everybody's been through and all of us just getting our garbage bills and our water bills and our tax bills in the mail, and all of us that live in Troy that got them, and I think the taxpayers of Troy are going to be really grateful to see 0. I really do. So.
Adam wants to
I
say
agree.
No, I mean, I don't want to predict the future, and we've been made promises before by the state and federal government, so 1 year at a time, but, you know, if this money comes through, we need to be responsible with it, and part of that is, you know, the tax levy. So, and John and I have always said to our legislators, hey, if you give us money, you know, we're not then, you know, we don't feel like we should go and raise taxes, like, we're gonna share some with the levy, implement program, and do the right thing. So, I mean, this is one step, step 1, and we'll see what next year brings. You know, but how, you know, you don't wanna, in my opinion, go to the tax cap, I mean,
no,
when this is the situation, but, you know, it does build on next year, all that is true. But if the state's gonna give money, we have to, I think, be, like the first slide said, fiscally responsible,
Right.
and also identify.
That phase-in really is going to happen, like Adam said. I mean, you know, we can look at it and see what effect it had next year. I mean, you're going to see in a minute, now I'm kind of said it already, we're going to be $15.5 million in federal money. We're going to be due $4.5 million increase in foundation aid on top of this year's foundation aid, right? So that 3.3 stays, and it's 4.5. To not go out at 0, I think would be irresponsible.
Okay.
Go with that? Okay. So, because the general fund that we talked about, and Adam kind of said, is different than the federal money, there's not a lot to talk about as far as the tax levy in the general budget that we got. So this is our, this year's budget is 113,651,375. Our draft 1 was like 116, 164-ish, right, 504. And our draft 2, with all the changes that took place, now remember, the executive budget used different revenues than the final budget did. You know, he was using the federal money to close gaps, and so that's been rectified. We have some savings in health insurance with the recently approved contracts. TTA was last meeting, or one before that, and nurses are tonight, and we had some others last year, so that savings in health insurance is now factored in. The charter school tuition was finally finalized in our favor, so that got put in there. We did have a couple retirements, not as many as we usually have, but there's still some talk that some more might be coming. And because of the tax levy change from the increase from 1.4 to 0. So the number's a little different, but our draft 2 and final budget, if the board is good with it, will be 115, 293, 164. It will mean we maintain all student programs. It will mean, things that we have in place for kids right now, we will have. Now, it doesn't mean we're not adding anything. It means we're not adding anything right now in this current budget. Now remember, because the governor had put in some federal money, that increase in foundation aid for this year kind of was just about a wash with all these other things that come into play. So it's not like we have $3 million to spend on adding things this year, but it does get us straight for this year, maintain all the things we have, and then focus on that federal money that's going to allow us to do some, wonderful things. So our budget, we would officially approve it next Tuesday, but it would be 115, 293, 164, which would maintain all programs and have a 0% tax levy increase.
Nice.
I think this should have been next, so I'll go back to the federal students. So the next stages for this budget is we'll adopt it next Tuesday. Remember, next week's meeting is Tuesday, not Wednesday, because of the BOCES vote. You have to vote on the BOCES administrative budget, and it has to be on Tuesday. So our meeting next week is Tuesday instead of Wednesday. Then we'll have the budget hearing, meet the candidates. Right now there are 4. If it remains 4 at that point, then we'll have to have the meeting candidates that same night. And we have some meetings with the PTA groups or parent council groups. Those will all be virtual this year, but we still wanted to make sure people could ask questions. I think it'll be a pretty straightforward budget this year for people, but especially with the 0, but we'll be available at all those. And we always like to hear the presentation 6 or 7 times, so I just didn't want to disappoint you this year. And then the vote would be May 18th. Okay, thank you. So the federal stimulus, let's talk about that a little bit. Ebony asked a great question in the email this afternoon. So I'll go through a few things. Donna can talk about, in generalities, the kind of things we're talking about. We have July 1st, which is quick. I mean, it's a couple months away, but it's still, that's a lot of time for us. Remember, we had to put a reopening pandemic plan together in probably 3 weeks. This is a lot better because this is, money you get to come up with. One of the things that we talked about, Adam and Don and Kristen and I, is, this is the time where we can really just think, what were the things we wished we could do for our students? What are the programs that we could put in place to make this school district better for every student that's here? And so it's going to allow us to really think way outside the box and really try to come up with things that we want to do. So the keys are, it's a supplement, not supplant. I already said that. That means it's extra money, not replacing money like the governor tried to do. It's $12 billion. It's the SRSA. Is that the CARES? Is that the thing for CARES?
That's the CARES.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's 3.8 and then another 8.2 for whatever ARP stands for.
American Recovery.
Thank you very much. It was allocated based on Title I, so that was good for us because that's high-need, pottery districts, which is why we got so much money. I've already said, but critically important, that it's treated as a grant for schools, so it's not part of our general fund. So, it's not affecting taxpayers at all. It's not going to be part of any of that stuff. There are some restrictions. There's some guidance that's out there that we're working through. There are some things you have to use it for. Learning loss is one. There's certain percentages you have to use each year. There's certain percentages you have to use for certain things. Social emotional needs, summer programming, after school programming. Not anything we don't want to use it for anyway, but there are some guidelines and some restrictions, so we're working through those, and certainly we will be compliant with everything we need to be compliant with. But for us, it's $15.5 million. Now, it says over the next 4 years in the guidance from the state, it's really through September 30th, 2024. Now, they have talked about already, they've put it in the guidance that there could be an extension through the end of that year, so it will be June 30th, 2025. It's not there yet, but they've already actually written it in there that could happen. But even September 30th, 2024 gives us 4 summers including this coming summer, and 3 whole school years. So really a lot of great things we can do. We talked about the fiscal cliff when the governor was going to put this in place of some state money. There is a smaller fiscal cliff because this money is going to go away, whether it's September 2024 or June 2025. It is going to be gone. But that's a long time, right? For those of you that were around, we got about $5 million just at School 2. Remember that grant 8-10 years ago, whenever that was? And as we put changes in place, because that was over 3 or 4 or 5 years, you can make plans for the things that are working using other money, the things that aren't working go away. We're certainly going to hire people. Now, the districts that didn't get a lot of money like that, significant amounts, they're going to be careful probably and not hire people, because when that money's gone, what are you going to do? But for us, we aren't going to not, I don't let Donna talk in more details, but the things we've talked about, with the mental health issues of our kids that have never had mental health issues at all before, but because they've been in the house for so long, or not around their kids, not around adults, not around their teachers, we want to add a few social workers, we want to add teachers, and really lower class sizes, really get, some great student to teacher ratios. And what could happen at the end of those 3 or 4 years is, as we have retirees, we can, let's say we hire 20 teachers. I think we said it might even be more than that, right? But let's say it was just 20 just for, and then next year we have 7 or 8 retires. Well, we could take a look and say, all right, do we want to put some of that new 20 there and not replace them all with brand new teachers? And so we will put a plan together to figure out what will happen when that money's gone. But the thought of the things that we can do over the next 4 years is really just, it's got us really excited. It's got Donna Watson up at night making notes and bringing them the next day.
Literally.
Go ahead,
I
Dr.
wake up
Watson.
in the middle of the night and I'm like, that's a great idea. So we had a little brainstorm session in cabinet where we really talked about, the guiding principles. As Mr. Carmelo said, the budget is a value statement, and we're about a strong academic and social foundation so that all kids can graduate college and career ready. That's our mission, so that's where we start, and then we look at, okay, what would the priority areas be? And as Mr. Carmelo explained, we are seeing, we have had a lot of success this year. I know you're not hearing that in a lot of places, but some of our students have been to school every day and have had, I won't call it a regular school year, but they have been in school as much this year as they have in previous years. And so when we look at our academic data, our different measures that we're giving internally, we see some students are making really nice gains. And then we have students who are really struggling. So I would say the gap has widened, and you have a lot of students with very different needs. And so that presents a challenge for the teachers. And so we talked about really improving academic achievement, focusing on ELA and math, and talking about some creative things we can do with co-teaching, and really trying to expand small group and individual work for all students. So wherever you are and whatever your needs are, you're going to have more small group time with your teacher and more one-on-one independent targeted instruction from your teacher. So how that looks, we'll have to work that all out. We also talked about expanding programs for our English language learners. So we are currently meeting all the requirements under the Commissioner's Regulation Part 154, but we feel like, again, just as we said, it would be a good idea to do more small group and individual work with all kids. We'd like to extend that and make sure that we're giving even more to the English language learners who have some significant barriers to learning, particularly those who have very, very limited English. So we'd like to increase our level of support there. We also talked about expanding Summer Academy, and these are ideas that we talked about in cabinet, but they are also, it's just the beginning of the brainstorming that's been informed by all of the committees that are working throughout the district. So there is a Social Emotional Developmental Learning Committee, and that's out of Donna Fitzgerald's office. So they have identified what are barriers we're seeing, how can we best respond to them. There's a family engagement team, there's a homeless coordinator, and, you know, so they're also informing a lot of this, as will the principals
professional
and
development.
directors. And the professional development, planning committee that we just met yesterday, and, you know, Ani was talking about things, she actually sent her things virtually, but different training that the nurses will need because of some of the things they're seeing now. So it's really informed by the people closest to the work. I would want you to understand that. So the academic achievement, improving equity and opportunities and outcomes, you know, and we are not sure what this support will look like, but it's an area that the district is really focusing on right now. We have our equity committee, and they've talked a lot about improving culturally responsive curriculum, ways of engaging students, and providing instruction that really students can identify with and relate to, and so there's a lot of work coming out of that group, and we thought about maybe using some of this money to help coordinate that better, and you know, we'll have to see what that looks like. And then also an effort for Careers Now. You know, we partner with the chamber, and there's a lot of work right now with career jams and internships and mentoring, and you know, there's so much happening right now with you know, students sometimes going off to college and not necessarily having a job or finding a job, and then there's jobs where, you know, kids might not know about them, and so really, you know, we have a career exploration internship program in the district, and it's wonderful, and a group of students have experiences all over Troy, so at Samaritan, at funeral homes, at RPI, you know, gaming companies, all kinds of experiences, and they decide, wow, I really like that, that's what I want to pursue, or I'm glad I had that experience, I definitely don't want to, you know, work in a funeral home or whatever. But we've talked about all kids having that all kids should have not just one, not even two, like at least 3 experiences with careers, like be thinking about what's gonna be there for you at the end of this. You know, our mission is college and career ready, so really, you know, we have Rose Gorman doing a great job leading that work, Brad Casper, there are people in the district you know, that are helping to lead that work, but we think we can do that even better, and we can include more students so that when they get to, you know, the graduation point, they can feel really informed about what they're doing next and hopefully be employable and ready for college. So we talked about a Careers Now type coordinator or somebody to look at some of that work. The social emotional needs of students, I know that Donna Fitzgerald and her team, you know, they're working tirelessly to identify what are some out-of-the-box ways that we can support kids. We've talked about adding social workers, thinking about possibly flexible scheduling where we might be able to provide counseling to students at night so they're not being pulled out of math class for counseling, so they can show up to school ready to learn and not need, you know, and be supported maybe outside the traditional school day. So these are some of the things. It's certainly not all-inclusive. And then the last one, which I will always advocate for, no matter what the situation is really building the capacity of the people who work in the district. So your leaders, your teachers, your support staff, making sure that everybody has access to the best training, that we're always learning and growing and getting better at what we do, and that can be conferences, it can be book studies. In our PDP meeting yesterday, Matt Robinson actually said, you know, we really need to bring back the Troy Leads Troy piece, because we talked about how lots of places are reaching out to us, like, how are you doing this, and what are you doing for that? And, you know, we've talked about our literacy work and how we've had people from all over the capital region, not this year because of COVID, but coming to visit and have a look at our work. And so we talked about, I think there were 12 different areas we brainstormed yesterday, sessions that we could do opening day where our own people in Troy would be leading the training for others, and people who are great at, you know, building classroom environments that excite kids, people great at using technology, a variety of things. So, and then at the end I just said books, like books, you know, we're always trying to buy more books. We'll never, ever, ever have enough books. So $15 million buys a lot of books. We might be good
So
4 years from now.
So those are all, actually, I mean, just ideas that was one brainstorming
Yeah.
session, and then obviously the three of us thinking about it, and a lot of it Donna thinking about it, that night over the last few days. There was also one about attendance, trying to improve attendance, and, could we have full-time people that really, can go to houses and, not the old truancy officer, because that was always a negative thing, but a positive way to do that where somebody can really go and do more home visits and get people into school. And so that was one as well. But again, all just things, we'll be meeting, again, obviously, a bunch of times to flesh some of that out. Again, we have to phase it in over 4 years, or you don't have to phase it in, but you have to plan for 3.5 years to spend the money. And we'll get input from all the administrators. Her professional development team that she talked about yesterday has teachers and all different, Anamuni and stakeholders from all around the district. Not unlike our reopening meetings. So we'll have actual meetings with people to kind of get more brains doing the coming up with ideas. My guess is at some point, probably the first meeting in June, we'll bring a little bit more detail. That was pretty detailed. To the board, so you can hear really what that means. Instead of just saying a bigger summer program, we'll tell you what that summer program is going to look like this year, what it might look like next year. We'll tell you that one of the things that I kind of said with the learning loss is put more teachers in, so maybe 2 teachers for a classroom, right? So if you have 18 kids but 2 adults, that student-to-teacher ratio, and really start looking at those class sizes and trying to figure out where those would all go. So we'll have a lot more detail for you at some point in June, so you can be part of that discussion as well.
But this is over 4 years, and so I assume the requirements of the plan may be subject to change, obviously, depending on what even next school year looks like that we don't know yet. So usually with these grants, we do a submission and then it gets fine-tuned as it goes. So those may be the highlights, and then, by December, we're gonna more define what that budget looks like in the next year, and so it goes on like that. So I don't think it's gonna be like, hey, here it is and it's done.
Yeah, we'll
It's
see in
gonna
4
be-
years.
Yeah,
Right.
it's gonna be evolve over the course of time.
Yeah. And one of the things was, actually breaking it up so that you're really only planning for 1/4 of that money each year, right? And not just trying to make a plan for the whole 4 years. I don't think we're even expecting that. Questions on that?
Will you keep us?
Ebony, I know you sent an email. Did you get your question answered?
I think I'm double muted, yes.
Okay, thank you. And
Will you keep us apprised of the changes and the updates? I mean, as, I know it's something that we have to vote on, but it would be
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
interesting to see,
yeah, so
how.
again, those are just our ideas. As we go out and share them with all those other groups, they might love them and add to them, and they might say, hey, what about this? And maybe not that, but this. And that's just like right now our first go at a
Jumping
whole
off,
bunch of things. Huh?
the jumping off point.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
was it.
And it's really interesting
And we will
because,
certainly keep you posted.
yeah, there's so many people that have so many great ideas. I mean, I'm sure you're gonna be changing your mind and say, oh, wow, this is, so.
Okay, so I think I'm almost done. Just the last slide, which is, the state and federal government has come through for schools, and especially for Troy School District. We're excited about that, and excited about the possibilities for the next school year and beyond. And look forward to developing a plan to ensure we meet the needs of all of our students and support them in reaching their full potential and achieve success. Really, really exciting times ahead for the students in Troy School District. We can, we will, and we did, actually. Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
Can we make sure that it
Other than
is,
Dan?
no, come on. They leave me a microphone every week.
Done. Next time. Done.
Can we make sure that once this is if we adopt this, that we get it out there to the taxpayers, that it is zero, and that the Troy Public Schools are doing something to offset
Definitely.
what the city's been hit with? Because I really think that's a real feather in our cap your cap, all of our caps for being here and doing our jobs.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Will you, board will adopt next Tuesday, I'll make sure Aaron Clary puts it out on social media that night, just that part, like
Yeah.
0% tax levy, just so people see it right away. It's a good idea.
Mr. Carmelo, Nathaniel Wooden here. How are you?
Good, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Great news tonight. I have a question and then a comment.
Okay.
In terms of this grant money, is it expected that it's all spent in each of the years it's granted? Does it have like an expiration date?
So good question. Adam, correct me if I'm wrong. Right now, the guidance says 12.5% each of the years for 4 years, so that would be 50. And then the other 50%, the districts have flexibility on when to spend that. So there's some restrictions right now, but it's not super prescribed that would tie our hands at all. But, you know, again, it's going to change, like Adam was just talking about, these kind of things.
Yeah.
When governments are involved, you know, there's a lot of different layers, and sometimes they change their mind halfway through. But I think right now the intention is that you take your money, however, whatever district's got, and some districts only got, you know, a couple $100,000. But whatever money you got, you kind of divide it up over the time that you're going to have. I think that's the intention.
Excellent. And then the only piece of concern or input I would have, and it sounds like we're on a great warpath to brainstorm, is just that, you know, beyond the 4-year window, assuming it does last that long, that the changes we decide to make have long-term impact and are sustainable, so that we don't live the high life, if you will, from an education perspective and goal perspective for 4 years and can't sustain it beyond that.
Exactly. Great point. It's 100% correct. That's the, you know, fiscal cliff thing that we talked about. So we'll have to be really, really intentional about it. You know, as the years go on, keep going back to it, keep looking at the budget, keep looking at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ahead to make sure. I mean, one of the things in the guidance tells you just that, not that we needed them to tell us because we knew, but you know, with the learning loss, with the gaps that people have and the mental health issues, you know, I think staff hiring the right staff and in the right programs and the things that Dr. Watson was just talking about, first of all, will help close those gaps. And I think 3.5 to 4 years is going to be long enough that when that time comes, and we'll plan incrementally over those 4 years, but when that time comes, our kids, our programs, our district will be in a place where we'll be able to get rid of some of those supports at that time because we'll be in so much of a better place. But we will keep, we will certainly, you are absolutely right, we'll keep an eye on that the whole way through. Anything to add to that?
Thank you.
I would just add that, back to your comment about the School 2 grants that we received, it gave us an opportunity to try new things, and some things were retained and others were not.
Yeah.
And figuring out a way how to fund those long term. And part of the brainstorming session we also had was, you know, what structural changes do you make versus just throwing money at a problem? You know, does the school day look different? Is transportation different related to attendance? Then also remember, do you leverage that with other state aid that you can get reimbursed? You know, all those things are part of this. So I don't think we've said it. We can't just hire 200 more people and then in 4 years they're gone and then everyone feels like you're taking something away.
Right.
And so we don't want to be in that mode either. We also will have to use some of the general fund over the course of time to plan if you have unemployment at the end, which we hope not to have, and kind of phase it out via retirements. But those are all things that we need to definitely worry about over the next 4 years.
Fantastic. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, great questions, great comments. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent recommendations, human resources, staff matters, unclassified matters, motion for consent agenda items 1 through 10.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Superintendent recommendations, human resources, staff matters, classified items 1 through 6.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Superintendent recommendations programs, motion for consent agenda items 1 and 2.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Superintendent recommendations, business finance, number 1, change orders as listed.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, board resolutions, motion for consent agenda items 1 through 4.
Second.
Under discussion, I'd like to congratulate Mrs. Schweizer on her new position.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Let's see, budget vote in, sorry, I was gonna say post. Budget vote in Board of Education election, motion for consent agenda items 1 through 4.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There's some important dates here we have, so future board meetings. Again, like Mr. Carmelo said, our next meeting will be Tuesday, which is next week, April 20th, here at the middle school at 6 o'clock. We have to adopt the budget and the BOCES vote.
Yep.
After that, we'll read into May 5th and May 19th. Both are at the middle school at 6:30 on the 5th and 6 o'clock on the 19th. Important dates for the personal registration day to register to vote will be May 4th from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. at School 12. The budget hearing to candidates night will be May 5th. It will be here at the middle school, just not listed, but we'll be here at the middle school. At 6:30, and then the budget vote and Board of Education election will be May 18th. The polling places are at all the elementary schools, I believe.
In school 12.
In School 12 from 7:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Okay, does anyone have anything before I make a motion to adjourn, other than Ann?
Wait a minute, do we discuss the vote for, BOCES?
We do that Tuesday the 20th.
Okay, I didn't know if we did the meeting ahead of time.
No.
Okay. Short, six.
Anyone else?
Unless you want me to sing.
A motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?